Misfits, people ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today. Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Skye Watterson. If you've ever struggled with traditional productivity systems or felt like your brain just doesn't fit the mold, Skye's story and work will be a game changer for you. She's the founder of Unconventional Organization, an ADHD support and coaching service designed to help entrepreneurs and executives build focused, sustainable success without burnout. She was diagnosed with ADHD while completing her PhD, and in this, I realized that the usual productivity advice wasn't really built for minds like hers. So she kind of created her own framework, one that now powers the systems used by over 80,000 professionals who follow her work. And her podcast, the ADHD Skills Lab, has over 200,000 downloads. Her web articles have reached more than 250,000 readers. Skye's belief is that ADHD isn't a flaw to overcome. It's a different operating system that, when properly supported, can be a massive asset. And through her work with founders, executives, and creatives, she's helping people rewire that approach to focus, consistency, and to be able to scale their businesses. So, Skye, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Oh, always ready.
Well, you do. You have a unique story, right? It's kind of a journey to learning more about yourself and, having this happen, I think, as you're getting your PhD and then figuring out how to, like I said, kind of rewire things to, use it to your advantage. So why don't you just take 5 minutes or so, just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah, so I always, thought I was going to go down the academic route. I did a master's. I was, starting on my PhD, but there was massive burnout between everything. I would burn out. I would go off and usually do something art or creative related. And when I started my PhD, actually, I was working on a business with my boyfriend, now husband, at the same time. And I really got to a point where I was thinking to myself, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to commit to doing a PhD, which is a lot of work, I need to understand why I keep having this spiky profile. Some days it's great. Some days it's awful. Sometimes my writing is amazing. Sometimes my, professors were like, what are you doing? So I ended up going to the Inclusive Learning Center, and they said, we think you have ADHD. We think you should get diagnosed, which is a real surprise for me. And it really threw me, as I think it throws a lot of people, into a path of wanting to learn as much about this as possible. However, academic, so I had access to a lot of the research. I was able to learn it. I started writing about it kind of as a way to hold myself accountable. And that really turned into the articles that became the core of what Unconventional Organization is today. And as I went on my journey, building businesses with my partner and then eventually building Unconventional Organization, I was always really passionate about business as well. And so it became a natural fit to connect those two things together and help people build at that business level or executive level, which is still really understudied. If you look at the research, you can't find a lot on what happens if you're the boss.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like everybody is ADHD in some way, at least, especially in the world that we live in today with like the instantness of it all. Like there's like every second there's like something grabbing your attention, pulling you away and stuff, right? Um, can you explain like what true ADHD looks like
Mm-hmm.
for an entrepreneur from an entrepreneur context and kind
Yeah.
of how to recognize it? And I've also used, I think I've seen you use the term like neurodivergent. So explain that as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah. So basically, when we're talking about ADHD, you're right. The symptoms of ADHD will probably have been experienced by everybody at some point. But the difference is that if you have ADHD, those symptoms, feeling like you're driven by a motor, being distracted, struggling to sit down in places you're supposed to sit down, things like that, these are more persistent across different areas of your life and more pervasive. So you will have struggled with this as a child, as an adult, in school, now as in different areas of your life. And so it's not just on Friday afternoons you feel like you have ADHD and on Monday it's fine. It's sort of all the time. So that's the biggest thing. And in terms of neurodiverse, so I use different terms. So neurodivergent is sort of more of a general term for people who have a different brain. So it includes ADHD, but it could also include autism, that kind of thing. A lot of people who are neurodiverse will have a couple of different things going on. And then I will also use the term neurotypical to describe people who don't have ADHD.
So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm sitting here kind of like watching this going, I think I'm probably ADHD. And so like, how do I know? Like, what are there any
Mm-hmm.
telling signs or is it just different for everybody?
Yeah, well, one is you're an entrepreneur. Like the research is pretty clear on that. Entrepreneurs, and I think this is why I ended up working with entrepreneurs and executives, is because honestly, they found me because so many people, there's research to indicate that people who have these tendencies to go their own way, do their own thing, are also more likely to be ADHD because it's one of the strengths of ADHD. ADHD does have strengths. In terms of what to do about it, there's a couple of things you can do. I mean, I would definitely recommend, you can look up online some of the things that are common in ADHD. You can look at, some of those tests there. But if you really want to know, then you have to go and see a psychiatrist and actually get diagnosed.
And I guess kind of in line with this, if someone does have ADHD or suspects that they might, and maybe they're struggling to kind of find that rhythm that works for them,
Mm-hmm.
like what's the first thing you would tell them to do?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would tell them to do is they have to change their systems. First thing I would tell them not to do is just keep, trying to do the same thing again and expect different results, because so often we can find ourselves doing that and even be encouraged to do that by people who don't live in our heads. So the first thing that I would really encourage them to do is understand what is the problem. Is the problem, I like to say, is it that you don't know what to do, or it's that you know what to do but you don't want to do it? Those are the two big struggles we tend to
That's
have.
a
And then
big distinction. I think
yeah,
that's really important, you know?
very
Sorry
important.
to interrupt, but I mean, anybody watching, listening, I think everybody struggles and has to decide or make that choice, right? In areas of their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, well, and for what I teach, I have 3 systems, 6 routines that I teach as practices for ADHD entrepreneurs, specifically designed to support that. So the reason I ask that is because it tends to indicate different kinds of struggles. So if you're struggling to, everything's on fire, you don't know what to do first, that's more of a overwhelm, working memory struggle, we need to help you break that down. And I can talk about how to do that. If it's that you know what to do, but you don't want to do it, that's more of a dopamine struggle. We need to look at dialing down your dopamine, and I can talk about that as well.
Well, and I want to talk about the systems. Before we get into it, the question I have, that probably sets that up a little bit is like, what are the most common productivity myths that don't work for ADHD brains, if you will, right? Because we're all
Oh,
about
I love this
productivity as
question.
entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right? Like, and why don't they work?
Okay, so let's go through them. So there's a whole bunch. I mean, one of them is just start, you'll feel better. Doesn't work. We tend to just start and then we either hyper focus for 5 hours and we do it at the expense of everything else, or we get lost. We lose the thread. Working memory struggles mean that we don't know what to do. We could also say the one where just do it a little bit a day doesn't always work, especially if that day doesn't end with Y and you're doing like every 3 days. And then you're like, was it yesterday that I did it? Is it tomorrow? Oh, I'll push it to the next day. It's really hard to build habits when you're doing it in this kind of ad hoc bits kind of way. Again, very difficult because of just how our brains work. So there's a lot of advice. I would say most of the traditional advice that you're going to get is not helpful, unfortunately.
Well, and that's a good segue into talking the systems then, right? So walk us through some of the core principles that you teach, like inside Unconventional Organization, some of the things that you would tell entrepreneurs with ADHD to really make them productive and, more successful in their role.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would teach is that it's not 100 different tips, because I think sometimes people are like, please don't give me a million tips. I can't remember them all. And it's more around, what are you struggling with? So entrepreneurs, generally speaking, are struggling with dopamine. So they're not getting enough motivation to do tasks that need to be done. They're struggling with working memory, which means that if they don't write it down, it's gone. And if they do write it down, they forget where they wrote it down. Like, that's kind of the situation we can be in. And they're struggling with time blindness. So it's going to be done tomorrow or it's going to be done in 6 months. And the difference between the two is somewhat variable. So those sort of pieces are the core components of what we're talking about. And then how we weave those together with tons of other research into ADHD is where I come from. I combine the research with the practical, the business strategies as well. So we're really talking about, when we're looking at Focus, Balance, Growth, which is the program that I teach, we're talking about how to focus you, how to focus your team, and how to focus on the revenue drivers that really matter. Those are the three core components. If we can get you working well on all three of those, your business is sort of guaranteed to succeed at that point. But the problem is the benefits are even greater, because you're also going to get to a place where you're able to feel focused and have clarity and, not be in that fog driving with the headlights off really fast and hoping that it all works out, which we've all been through.
Take us through each of those three areas. And again, yes, I think we all understand, like, each entrepreneur is different, our needs, if we have the, ADHD, are probably different, but I imagine there are some actions underneath each of those that the majority of people can take to make a difference for themselves and create that, right? So, like, take us through each one and give us like some, give us like some of the steps and those actions that under each of those areas, like starting with focus and going from there, that we can do that will help us.
Yeah. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to talk about the overwhelm. So a lot of people come to me because they're saying, hey, I get into my office and everything is on fire immediately. There's a ton of crises. I have no systems, and all I do is fight fires all day, and I never build momentum on what really matters in my business. Or I'm paralyzed and I shut down everything and I just refresh my email all day, kind of in that space. So the thing that you want to do is you want to go through and you want to start by, I would say, writing everything down. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take everything that is in your head. So not your emails, not that task list. Don't unearth that stuff. Keep it simple. Write down everything that is currently in your head on a piece of paper or a document somewhere you're going to remember it. And actually, this process, I have a system for it. It's called the 2-minute focus formula. If you DM me on Instagram, you can DM me Misfit at Unconventional Organization, and I will send you that information for free because I think this is a really important one. So basically what you do is you go through and you look at everything that you've just written down and you say, okay, of these things here, what is truly urgent? What truly needs to be done tomorrow? Or there will be a significant external negative consequence. And the way I like to describe it is, heaven forbid you find yourself, something happens, you find yourself in a waiting room somewhere. And these are the tasks that even though you're in a waiting room and, life has just happened to you today, you are in a position where you're going to have to either do this task on your phone or you're going to have to message somebody and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to come in tomorrow, XYZ. You're going to have to do something. Everything else is not truly urgent. And I've done this exercise with hundreds at this point of entrepreneurs, and we've never found ourselves with more than 5 things that are truly urgent that day. So that's the very first thing we do, because a lot of us spend a lot of time on everybody else's urgent tasks, things that look easy to tick off but are not truly urgent. And what that does is it stops us from focusing on the truly important tasks. So what we do is once we've identified what's truly urgent, now we want to look at what's truly important. We want to look at the rest of that list and go, okay, what are the 1 to 3 things that if I did it this week, it would move the needle on my business? And we have a whole system for understanding what that looks like, your 80-20 principle, that kind of thing. We go through that process, but at its core, what is the thing that's going to help you really grow? And a lot of time it's going to be something mundane that you didn't want to do. I've worked with clients who have $1 million opportunities or $1 million things that they need to solve. And they need to pick up the phone, send an email, write a report, and they haven't done it. And it's in their task list. And because there's all this stuff that's not really important, not really urgent, piling up, they can't see it. They can't truly grapple with why they're not doing it. And so this exercise is about unearthing that process. And I actually, I have some daily standards when you join my program. There's 4 things where if you do them every day, you're guaranteed to win. And one of them is doing this practice because it's so, so important.
So, all right. So that's focus, right? Mm-hmm. So what I want to do is I want to go through each of the other areas because I think this is the meat of it. This is so important. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick 60-second break, 1-minute break. We'll come right back and then we'll jump into both of those. So we'll do that. We'll be right back. Misfit Entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again. All right, so Skye, you did a masterful job of kind of talking through that focus area and some of the things that people can be doing. The brain dump, man, that's something like I started doing years ago. Like if I felt overwhelmed, it just like stop, put everything on paper that's in your head, and then start to you feel so much better. It's like a big burden off your shoulders, and then you start to organize that and see, like you said, what's important right now, what's not, and all that stuff. Makes a huge difference. But then we've got the other areas, right? I think you said it was is it balance for the second one?
Yeah, so the second one is about dopamine. It's about not wanting to do the task. So the second piece we've got is, okay, I know what I need to do. I've written it down. I've brain dumped it. But now I'm grappling with the reality of I always kind of knew I needed to do that task, but I didn't want to do it. And so we have to talk about why. And once again, this is where I differ from a lot of other people. You're not going to hear me say, well, you should just try harder. You're never going to hear me say you should just try harder, because it's if you could try harder, you probably already would be trying harder. Like we don't do this job and try and be business owners so that we can not do that. So one of the things that we need to grapple with then is why you're not doing the task. And there tends to be three reasons. And these are all kind of very specifically ADHD struggles, but I think everyone can relate to them. It's either too boring, it's too confusing, or it's too emotionally vulnerable. The last time you did this, somebody rejected you. It could be embarrassing. Those tend to be three. You can have a couple of them, but usually one of these things is the culprit. So the first thing we want to do is understand why you're not doing a task. Is there any task you don't want to do right now? I'd love to know.
You know, it's really interesting as I think about this, because I talk about, there's a principle I've used for years. Actually, it was synthesized from looking at consistencies from entrepreneurs on this show, and I call it DCP. And D stands for discipline, C stands for consistent, and P stands for persistence, right? So discipline, consistency, persistence. And you look through most things in that lens, right? And if something's not getting done or it's not happening, it's breaking down with one of those three things. To me, discipline is doing the things that you know you need to do even when you don't want to do them. I want to come back to that because I think that's going to be a little different for somebody who's ADHD, right? Consistency, though, is doing that day in and day out without fail, because you can be disciplined for one day, right? But you know, if you're not consistent at it, then you know that's where you're breaking down. And then even if you're disciplined, you're consistent, you're going to hit like what seems like insurmountable roadblocks, like just things that just are, you just have to persist through to overcome. Otherwise, you kind of plateau. So I hear you saying this, it reminds me of that. But I also go back, like I said, discipline for somebody with ADHD is different, because based on what you're saying, because it may not be like, you know what you need to do and you don't want to do it. There's an extenuating factor or something that's causing that not to happen. So I think discipline is different. So when I think about me, like you asking that question, like if there's something that I know I need to do, like I just got back from vacation. There's a million things that I need to be doing right now. In fact, like I have blocked time for after this today to do my brain dump and figure it all out, because there are so many things that I need to do. Like I don't even know where to start. Like that's my biggest thing right now.
So you're still in step one.
I'm still in step one, right? And then from there, there'll be things that I prioritize and things that, you know, I will eventually do, but I will probably, like anybody else, put off some, you know, and knock out the other easier things first, right? So,
and it's always amazing to me how often people are putting off they're like, I don't know why my business isn't growing. I don't know why my team keeps leaving. And the thing they're putting off is like the thing that will solve that problem, but it's too boring, too confusing. It's emotionally vulnerable. So the first thing that we do, to your point, this is different, right? It's the funny thing about ADHD strategies is that it's not so different you've never heard of it before, but it's like a different lens a different way to do everything. So the first thing that we do is we go, okay, we're just gonna hit all three. So I have something I call a step into focus routine. I've been teaching this for about 4 to 5 years now. It's based on a bunch of research into the dopamine transfer deficit theory. And the first thing that we do is we start by giving you a reward for sitting down, usually at your desk, but you could sit down in front of your packing or whatever it is you need to do with the intention of doing a task. It's a reward that you have at this particular space. And the reason for this is because when we look at the research, what we find is that people who have ADHD don't get a dopamine boost attached to a future reward in the same way as neurotypicals do. So while a neurotypical might start a task and be like, man, it's going to be so good when I finish this task at the end of the day and I get to relax, go for a walk, chat with a friend, it's going to be the best. We don't get that. We're like, this is lame, and eventually I'm going to chat with a friend. And those two things are 100%, they're disconnected. They're not as connected. And so what that means for us is we need to give ourselves a little motivational boost right now. And that can feel 100% different from how most people operate. But the biggest struggle that I've seen people have is actually they refuse to do this point because they don't want to be the person who gives themselves a reward for starting, and then they don't do the task. So it's not as if you don't get to skip this step. I always say dopamine is a non-negotiable. So let's talk about what this would look like, because people come to me all the time. They go, Skye, I don't want to eat a ton of chocolate, every day. What are we doing? So usually we're looking at your 5 senses, touch, taste, smell, sight, sound. And we're going, okay, what are the couple of things that we could bring to your desk to get you started? So we might say, okay, first step of doing this task is I'm going to sit at my desk and I'm going to have a really cold beverage and I'm going to read an article and listen to some music. You're hitting kind of 3 sensory points at once. That's pretty good. Most people will be like, okay, I could do that. And that's hitting your dopamine. Now you're there. You've given yourself some dopamine boosting. From that point on, what we're looking at is we're going, okay, let's, take this time to remove any distractions. You're feeling good. Who cares about those distractions? Your brain's like, I'm getting some dopamine. We don't have to worry about that right now. So we remove the future distractions and we take that minute, we write down on a little Post-it note. I'm holding up a little pink Post-it note here, exactly what you need to do during this period of time, like a recipe. That's going to help you with the too confusing part. The reason it's too confusing often is the working memory struggles. So we're going to break that down. We're going to write that down. At this point, you know what you need to do. Exactly. And then from there, we're just going to open the application. This is kind of how we help a little bit with that fear of the blank page, fear of things that are going to be difficult. We're just going to open it. We're just going to tinker around. If we're going to, if we have to make a phone call, we'll sort of make sure we've got the phone number, make sure we've got the phone, think about what we're going to say. No pressure right now. And at this point, inertia tends to go the other way. You've done the dopamine. You know what you're going to do. You already opened the application. You might as well start this task. And I've seen people go from, I spent all day trying to do something and I didn't do it, to I got something started within 15 minutes. In fact, I worked with, a very, very prominent New Zealander who's got a book coming out and is doing a ton of keynote speaking right now. And he had to write slides for those keynotes. And he used this system and went from, I put off my slides for weeks on end, to I get the slides done consistently in the block of time that I select for it. Those things are real confidence builders when you're an entrepreneur, because that's the secret stuff that nobody knows about how you run your business.
What about then, like, I have to imagine, like, because you went through some of it, time management techniques have to be different than like traditional ways of like blocking time and like setting a timer and like, clarity breaks, all that type of stuff that, is traditional, like time management, right? That has to kind of be flipped on its head in some ways. So like, what are the time management techniques that entrepreneurs with ADHD should be focused on? I mean, you kind of outlined one of them, obviously, there to get a task done, but what else goes along with that?
It's an interesting one. So with ADHD, we know we struggle with transitions. So if we have a day that's full of totally different kinds of tasks, so you have a meeting and then you're supposed to do an hour of deep work and then you have another meeting and then you have something else, that is going to make it's going to be a very difficult day for somebody with ADHD. We struggle to transition between tasks. We have a bit of a bleed effect between those tasks. We'll sort of still be thinking about the meeting when we're trying to get the deep work done and then still thinking about the previous deep work when we're trying to go to the next meeting. So one of the very important things to do is to chunk your time. So we base it on a combination of the similarity of the task and your energy. But generally speaking, it can be helpful to say, this is my speaking block. This is my deep work block. Some people do it on different days. Some people do it on different times of day. It really depends on you and what you're doing. But the number one thing you want to do is you want to, make it easy for yourself. If at all possible, schedule that deep work for times when you're going to have more energy. So you don't need to spend as much time kind of pushing yourself. If you schedule deep work for the afternoon and you're always completely gone by the afternoon, that's not going to be helpful if you don't get a boost from it. Schedule something that's going to give you a boost for that period of time. So if you chunk things, you give yourself like a group of similar tasks and you do them at times when you are associated with your energy, those are two things that are going to help you. The third one is you really want to talk about, sorry, you go.
Well, no, I just want to say that is because hold your thought because we want the 3rd one. But what you just said is, I think, incredibly important for anyone. This is something that for years I didn't get. And then when I finally figured it out, it was like unlocking a whole new paradigm. Like once I started to understand when I was at my best during the day and then put the top things I need to do during those times, my productivity exploded.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know what that is. And I actually have scheduled out my calendar like that way and everything now to maximize those times. That's one of the reasons, like I have very set times that I do interviews when I'm at my best, and we're on one of those right now. Right. So, So yeah, go on with the third one. I just want to make that point that if somebody can start to think about like when I'm at my highest energy, when am I my most focused? Some people, a lot of people, it's probably like first thing in the morning, right, or something like that. Yeah. But once you start to realize like what those are for you and start to schedule things like that, it makes a huge difference. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's massively, massively helpful. And then the third thing that I would say is just you don't want to add too much complexity to your calendar, if at all possible. So generally speaking, what I ask people to do when they start working with me is we'll go through a business audit. So we'll talk for 45 minutes. We'll look at, where you're at, what you need, what is the goal that you have to reach. And then we identify what is the 80-20, what is the 20% that's going to give you the 80%. We want you to be working on that for, 15 to 45 minutes or to 2 hours every day. So we want to kind of have something that is a habit that you are building that is going to get you closer to where you're going. If you can fit all three things into your day, you're chunking, you're doing things with your energy, and you are consistently on all days that end with Y, working on building a habit that is going to move you towards your goal. So every day you're grappling with whatever it is. I'm writing a book right now, so that's mine. That is the thing that is going to transform your business. And that's, what we've talked about this whole thing. This is the level of how to help you transform your business. The next thing that I tend to work on with people is how do we transform your team? How do we transform how you work with and communicate with and engage with your team so that you are not an island, because that's how you're going to win. That's how you're going to get to that, right, that multiple six-figure space that you're looking for.
Yeah, I was actually, I've been right now, I'm CEO of a fast-growing software company that I started on the board with a couple of years ago, and I'm taking the team right now through the 5 levels of leadership by John Maxwell. I don't know if you've ever read that book before. But I think that should be required for any entrepreneur. And I think we all hear, and I think we are, as entrepreneurs, it's written about everywhere. It's like, it's almost like it's we gloss over it at this point in time because everybody says, well, you need to empower your team. You need to like
Mm-hmm.
stick to your genius zone and hire others to do the rest.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
I like that's very, very true. That's very,
Mm-hmm.
very true. But a lot of times it's like, I want to do that, but I can't afford to hire that person. Like
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
happens with businesses all the time. Now, thankfully,
Mm-hmm.
we've cracked that code in the businesses that I built and
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we can build and do that and grow over time. But
Mm-hmm.
once you do that and have that team in place, the hardest thing to do is to combat what's called founder syndrome, which is
Mm-hmm.
the tendency to want to be a part of everything still in some way, shape, or form
Yep.
and not let your
Yep.
people grow. And that's one thing. That's
Yeah.
why I'm taking them through the book, because you get into levels 3 and 4. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's about allowing these people that you have trusted in and put in places of
Mm-hmm.
leadership to
Mm-hmm.
go at it, fail, figure it out. Yes, they're
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to do it as good as you, all of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yep.
curious though, like, how does that work? Like, somebody who's ADHD too, that could be a really interesting
Oh yeah.
paradigm to like empower, lead a team and stuff and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
how does that
100%.
work?
Well, I think I always say to people, we're always ADHD all the time. We're ADHD on holiday. We're ADHD in a crisis. We're ADHD when we're leading a team. And what that can look like for a lot of people is it can be great, visionary, problem solver, pulling things out of the hat. These are strengths of ADHD. But it can also look like time blindness, terrible timelines, um, vacillating between forgetting this person exists on your team and micromanaging them, struggling with working memory, saying, oh, yeah, sure, like, you should do this, and then forgetting that you gave that task, that did that person do that task. And in general, not having a clear line of sight on what you're doing, how you're doing it, and where you're going.
Yeah, I have to imagine communications really, I mean, communication is everything when
Mm-hmm.
you're building a
Yep.
team. And I have to imagine there's communication potential struggles too that you have to really be on top of.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Communication and just, it's that follow up. Did you, sure, in the moment in the meeting, we had this conversation, we agreed to do this thing, we were all excited about it, but did we follow up? Did we do it? Do you have a leadership cadence to make sure that your team is on board? We talk about measuring what we expect. Are you measuring what you expect? And I give you all these problems if you're listening and going, oh my God, this is horrible. We teach you how to do this in the community. Once you build the systems, it becomes very simple. And again, it's not meant to be hard. Like all of these systems, once you do them, you'll be like, oh, this feels really easy, because the traditional ways of doing things, they're not built for how your brain works. So you're sort of doing a lot of fighting. You're sort of doing a lot of gap filling. Whereas, when you're doing it in a way that works for you, that's going to take into account the fact that your brain isn't going to remember certain things, but we don't need to, it's going to feel a lot easier.
Well, I don't think, well, you don't have to go it alone at this. There's actually tools and frameworks out there for this. You probably use
Mm-hmm.
some of them, but like in the businesses that I work with, I usually start using with them, usually because they don't have anything, like using the EOS
Mm-hmm.
framework and then building from
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
EOS is a framework that gets everybody on the same page, same meeting cadence, the same terminology, all of
Mm-hmm.
that to
Mm-hmm.
work on the business, right? And create the to-dos,
Mm-hmm.
the follow-ups from each meeting and all of that. So it's good
Mm-hmm.
from accountability standpoint, right? It's going to give you, a great base. You have to take it, make it your own summit and go from there. And then there's other tools like, I would say most CRM systems and stuff. If you're good about actually putting like your notes or information in those things, if you're tracking meetings in it or doing things like that, there's usually like follow up in 3 days, hit the task, like things like that. Like
Yep.
HubSpot's notorious for that, for everything. And so I think people can aid themselves with a lot of these systems and stuff that are out there to help them not have
Mm-hmm.
to remember everything, if you will, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even us non, well, maybe I am ADHD, I don't know, but even people non ADHD, it's so much to keep up with. So
Yeah,
use the
I mean, I
systems.
think you're right. I think you can use the systems, but I also think being told to use the systems when you're ADHD is a little bit like being told to write the
There you
process
go.
doc. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, thank you for that. So one of the things I teach, actually, I have a framework. It's called the SOP pipeline.
Hmm.
It's basically a visual model of your business. So the first thing that I recommend that business owners do is that they actually create, using something like Miro, a visual model of how their business works. Lead flow, acquisition, retention, expansion. Like, what is that flow? And then they ask their team to go ahead. You go ahead and set up who is responsible for each of these sections, each of these pipes, so that you know, because otherwise what will happen is a team is responsible. A team is not responsible. There's a person. So you have to go through, you have to make sure that
Hmm.
one person is responsible. And then from there, you ask that the team to drop into that visual pipeline that you can see, in your business. It shouldn't be that complicated. Again, I ask people to build this so that they don't go off and add a whole bunch of pipes that go nowhere. You'd be surprised. There's always one or two systems that somebody's building in the corner and going, you're like, is this actually helping us drive revenue? No, it's not. Okay, good. Let's can that one. So it's a visual representation of your ADHD sometimes. But from there we go in and we go, okay, let's look at tag your SOP here. I want to be able to, at a glance, open this visual document, look at my business, see which pipe is red, orange, green based on if it's working, if it's happening, if I'm not involved in it. And I want to be able to double click in on that SOP, and I want to be able to see what is happening. How is this pipe getting done? Because what will happen so often with a business owner is that they will be drowning in tasks and to-dos and follow-ups. And they won't realize that the reason that they're not experiencing the revenue to hire the people that they want to hire is because 3 steps up the pipeline, they have something that is 100% broken that got missed that no one is responsible for.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. And again, I think that's can be for everybody, not just
Yeah.
ADHD, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I and I could go on. I probably could have a 2-hour conversation on this topic with you about these different things. But I do want to come to like burnout's a big thing. You've spoken about the danger of burnout,
Mm-hmm.
especially for like uh, neurodivergent entrepreneurs. What are like the warning signs they need to be looking
Mm-hmm.
for? How can people course correct? Um, I think this is a big one that we do need to cover. So go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, yeah, it's so true. Burnout, the classic signs of burnout are cynicism, things that used to excite you, maybe a win in your business, they don't excite you anymore. You start to feel very overwhelmed. You just don't feel like it's worth it. There's all of these classic signs that you can go and look for. I think when it comes to ADHD, one of the one of the reasons that people with ADHD burn out so often, and I'm very lucky. After I got diagnosed and I learned the systems, I never burned out again. And I have burned out so many times. One time I burned out and I went and worked in a bakery for a year. That's how much I burned out. So, these are all the different ways you can experience it. But the key thing that I would say is if you have a goal that you're trying to reach, and the way you're trying to reach that is by every day you wake up and you hit a wall, and you just hit a wall and you push through that wall and you go, no, I'm just going to do it. And you can feel yourself getting tired, more exhausted, more cynical, more frustrated. The burnout is happening. It's going to happen in some way, shape, or form. If you're a business owner, your options when you burn out are pretty limited. And, the one you want to go for is you want to start building systems that do not make you feel exhausted at the end of the day. You don't have to run a business like that. I know it feels like that because you're taking everyone else's advice, and they're going, great, that's great, you're doing what I told you to do and the way I told you to do it, and you're like, oh my god, I'm barely making it, but this must be how they feel. That's not how they feel. They have different brains.
Yeah, and again, that's that actually brings me. I hear that, and I guess this is going to be my last question because I think it's probably really important. I think for entrepreneurs that are building businesses too, when you hire people, they may have ADHD and everything as well. So,
Uh-huh.
what do you think? What do you think the world gets wrong about ADHD? What do you want to set the record
Hmm.
straight on for people to understand before we're done our time today?
I think the people in the business who have ADHD the most tend to be the boss. So that's where the ADHD is usually. That's the number one thing I would say. And I would also say, in terms of ADHD, it's a strength and a weakness. It's a different interface. It's a different way of working. Creativity, you've got it. Original thinking, problem solving, wonderful, amazing, great in a crisis in that way. But you're also seeing those struggles. But you're also seeing those struggles with working memory, with follow through, with doing the last 10% of a project. And that's going to be there too. And so the question for you is, both as an individual and as, a team leader, is, are you going to adjust the systems, or are you going to ask the person to adjust? Because you're probably going to have a better chance of adjusting the systems. And at this point, because I've worked with government institutions in New Zealand on this exact topic, people will tend to come in and say, but this person doesn't want to work and this person is frustrating, and et cetera, et cetera. All those things can be true. People are different. Some people just aren't, good at what they're doing. But if it's an ADHD problem, then adjusting your systems is usually going to be the solution.
I love that. That's a great way to end it before we get to your Misfit 3. So we're going to do that. We're going to take just one more 1-minute break and be right back with Skye's Misfit 3. Before we get into today's Misfit 3, I want to take a minute to talk to you about a free resource available to you from the Misfit Entrepreneur, the Misfit Minute. The Misfit Minute is the free weekly resource packed with useful tips, tricks, and information from the world of Misfit entrepreneurs. It not only includes further resources on the week's Misfit Entrepreneur guest, but additional links, articles, and resources to help you be more successful. It's delivered every Friday to your inbox. To sign up, all you have to do is go to the homepage at www.misfitentrepreneur.com and you will see the Misfit Minute sign-up page. Don't miss out on this great resource and all it has to help you. Sign up today and look for it this Friday. Okay, it's time for Skye's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that she wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest on the show is I say, look, if you're going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Skye, what are your Misfit 3?
My Misfit 3 are, first of all, add a reward to the start of something. I'm going to dopamine is a non-negotiable. Life would be so much better for people if they added a reward to the start of something. The second one is, if you are struggling, then change the system. Don't try and change yourself as a first step. Change your system. You can do, obviously, mindset, and I love mindset, and I talk about it all the time. But if you want to change something, change your system. And then the third one, and this is not mine, I'm stealing this, is that the people who say they can't and the people who say they can are usually right.
I love that. I love all 3 of those. And that last one is a great reminder for just about everybody out there. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Unconventional Organization. Like I said, you can message me Misfit and I will send you the 2-minute focus formula to help you reduce overwhelm in your business. If you want to find me online, you can find me at unconventionalorganization.com. And there you can find access to my podcast, the ADHD Skills Lab, as well as my coaching program. We're accepting probably 30 to 60 applicants this year. So you can go through and, see if you want to apply to join and learn this program.
And that's organization with an S, because I made the mistake of using a Z when I first looked it up. It is,
but we have become wise. I didn't realize when I started this business I'd mostly be working with people in the US. But if you go to Instagram and you type in Unconventional Organization with an S, you just find a picture of my face and a link to the one with So Don't worry, either one will get you there.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We'll link to all that stuff in the show notes, the best show notes in the business, for reasons I'll talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, your first episode with us, welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us. Thank you for watching and listening. And I hope you become a regular listener and subscriber. And for all of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. It's actually part of my personal growth routine. I build in time every single week where I go back through these episodes with amazing guests like Skye, and then I take my best pieces of wisdom and tips and habits and things that I think are important. I share those with you. So check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it. Help share Skye's message. Because I say this in every episode, we all know one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Skye shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Skye, thanks so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.